Welcome to Mastering Your Monday podcast. And this is the show that talks about boundaries, work-life balance, and living a life where you have control. This is for highly driven professionals who want to develop a more balanced professional and personal life and live out their true values. Those who are ready to grab the reins and change the status quo. The professional who's ready to have a life again and who's ready to take a stand, living in a way that you feel respected, valued, and fulfilled each and every day. We talk about topics like setting boundaries, taking risks, life management, and all the tips, techniques, and strategies to help you master your Monday, one day at a time. I am so ready to get into this great conversation. So come on, pull up a chair, ringside that is, and let's talk the real deal today on episode 9. When is enough enough? Hey, Michelle O'Neill here. Now, I've recently had 2 separate conversations with some friends of mine about issues that they were having. In both instances, they were dealing with similar issues that they were coming from 2 different perspectives. And it's all about dealing with people who just hit about your limit, that you've just really had enough of them, had enough of their attitudes or their conversation or the way they're saying. But how do you handle these things when people come to you like that? And the thing was, in both instances, they weren't really let's say friends. They were more co-friends. So how do you deal with this situation with people that you deal with on a pretty regular basis, but not necessarily someone that is your ace boon coon? So I want to address this in several ways. I want to define what is enough. How do you know if you've reached enough? And then when is enough enough in relationships? And then you're enough to demand enough. So I'm going to take that enough and look at it a little differently. And finally, the litmus test for enough. So let's start with the first thing. How do you know that you've reached enough? How do you know that you hit your limit? So there are 2 phrases that come up for me right off the bat. You either say, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. Now, that usually happens when there's a conversation and it's leading nowhere and you're through with it. And so the words that come out of your mouth, or at least out of my mouth, is I'm done. That's it. I'm done. That kind of reminds me of my mom when I want to argue back with her. It's like when she said that, the conversation was over. So that was the end of the conversation. And then another phrase that we say a lot of time when we've hit our limit and it's very clear and the person really needs to listen to you is stop. Just stop. I think that's pretty clear. If you tell someone to stop, they really should take heed and stop, but they don't always. So, how do you know you've hit your limit? If those 2 phrases don't come to mind, well, let's look at it this way. You're in a constant state of anxiety and irritation when you're around that person. When you think of that person, you start getting irritable. As soon as you see that person, you start getting irritable. It's just something about that person that now you've gotten to the point that they wreak irritability when they're around you. And then sometimes it even leads to anger. Just seeing them, just them saying, just don't even say anything to me. Just stop. Just the thought of them saying thing or whatever they say out of their mouth, you're in the eye rolling stage. I think you've hit your limit. And then sometimes there's physical manifestations like indigestion when you're around this person and you start getting this heartburn or indigestion because you're holding yourself back. You're dealing with stress. A lot of times we deal with migraines. I know for my daughter, one of the things that when she's kind of hit her limit, when she's trying to control herself, when she's held things in too long, not only actually there's quite a few people that I know that happens to. So my sister and my daughter, it's migraines. It manifests itself in migraines when they've kind of hit their limit. And then other things is other people that I know is digestive issues like upset stomach. See, indigestion and heartburn is usually with the reflux and the upper digestion. And now I'm talking about stomach things like things that make you go to bathroom or that makes you nauseous, all these kind of digestive issues. These are some ways that that limit, hitting that limit physically manifested itself. And the other thing is when you find it hard to be civil, are there just some people, as soon as they step in the room, as soon as they have the nerve to say anything to you, it's very hard to be civil. It's very hard to be, and you're trying no matter how hard. Oh my gosh, you're really saying, I'm supposed to be nice. Um, Let me hear them out, but you already got the comment back in your mouth, just ready to come out, and it's so hard to be civil. You've hit your limit. So what about is it just doesn't feel good when you're around them? You don't feel good, and I don't mean don't feel good sick, but there's nothing about being in their presence that bring you joy. There's nothing about being around them that makes you feel happy, that makes you feel calm, that makes you feel good. There is absolutely nothing about them that gives you those feelings. You've hit your limit and you really don't need to be around that person. That reminds me of a song. I don't know how old you are, but for me, I'm a little older. And if you remember Donna Summers, she did a song called Enough is Enough. And that I wanted to say the words of it to you. So I was going to sing it and I said, no, I'm not going to sing it, but enough is enough is enough. I can't go on. I can't go on no more. No, enough is enough. I want you out. I want you out the door now. So that's what I'm talking about. That's the feeling that I'm talking about when you have reached enough, when you have reached your limit. So now that you have a pretty good idea if you've reached your limit, let me ask you this. Are there people in your life that make you feel this way? Are there people that you can actually put a name to? As soon as I started talking, they said, oh yeah, that's so and so. That's so and so. So then my question is, why are they in your life? But we'll talk about that later. So when is enough enough in our relationships? Now, I'm not talking about marriage kind of relationships. There are so many relationships that we have every day. There's the working relationship, there's mom and child relationship, there's parent and child relationship, there is sibling relationship, there is family relationship, there is associate relationship, business relationships, whatever. There are so many relationships. So where does this play out? Where else in relationships is enough? When there is human connection, there is an opportunity for discord. Simple as that. We have two people, two different personalities. They are going to be different. And so there is an opportunity for discord. And it's how do we handle that discord? So I really want to concentrate more on the more surface and not the covenant type relationships like marriage. That's different because we're going to approach, if we're married or we have our kids, we're going to approach those situations a little bit more different. There is more grace there, to be honest, and we know that there is more grace there. There's more, we should work harder on those covenants you work for. That it is the word I'm looking for, I can't even think of it, but there is a commitment. That's what I was looking for. There is an actual commitment in those relationships that we just don't give those up easy. But the thing of um, And in those relationships, like I said, there's more grace, but there's also room for professional help. And those relationships, when they're not working, when they're hard to maintain, then is a time to bring in professional help. And like I said, you work harder in these. So, what I'm talking about are more relationships like work relationships, business relationships, friend relationships, not friends that have been there forever and ever, but more surface friends. How do you deal with those relationships? How do you say enough is enough? Because we don't have to remain in those all the time. So we want to look at work relationships first. Our co-friends. Again, a co-friend is a coworker that is a little bit more than an acquaintance, right? It's that person that you see every day, you talk to every day. You're spending over 8 hours with that person. So there is a relationship there. You share things about your family, you share things about how you think, you laugh and joke about things at work. So they're a little bit more than just a coworker, they're a little bit more than just an acquaintance because you have built a relationship with them, but just not on the level of someone that you socialize with a lot. And it's not quite a true friend, but someone that you like and that's in your life for that particular season, but not necessarily for life. So that's that person that, when you leave work, you may never even keep in contact with them, or you might, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of times it's that person that from a group that you've been in. If you paint, then you've been in this painting class and you've seen this person day in or day out, or this person that you see every time that you go to the gym, and you've become gym buddies. And so you always, hey, when you going to come to the gym next? And you talk about things while you're on the elliptical together and you're going side by side and you're moving and you're talking about, so what happened to you today at work? These are the kind of friends I'm talking about. And sometimes it's even family members, because we have those family members that are extended family members, or those toxic family members. Uncle Jim, who always comes to the the Thanksgiving home thing, but you only have to see him once a year, or Aunt Sarah, who's there every Christmas and you only see her there. So there's a certain respect, a certain way that you treat them, but sometimes they just get out of hand, especially if they had too much to drink. Those kind of extended family members. So when you are no longer listening to each other is when it's time to stop the conversation. So you're talking to Uncle Tom. I don't like that name. So Uncle Bob, let's say Uncle Bob, and he starts getting into this political conversation and or this football conversation, and you two don't agree on the best team. He liked the Raiders and you like the Ravens. And I hope I'm saying two good football teams, but I am not a football fan. Ask me about basketball. We're a little better. But anyway, we'll say the Ravens and the Raiders. And I hope they're both football teams. But you're talking about that and it gets out of hand because he's had a little bit more to drink and he's no longer listening to you. He's so big on spouting what his opinion is and how he feels about it and why they are the best team. Enough is enough. It's time to cut the conversation and stop the conversation. So, when does the conversation end? Exactly when it gets like that, because you know that anything else at that time is a waste of your energy and a waste of your time, and it becomes toxic and unhealthy. It almost comes to blows. That's when enough is enough. One of the things is I have a friend who we have different political views, and they have one view, I have another one, and our conversation goes well until it gets to that point that I'm telling you that we're no longer listening to each other. He thinks this way, I think this way, and I know he will not change the way he thinks. He knows I will not change the way I think. And so at that point, I say, you know what? It's time for us to agree to disagree, because any conversation past this point is just a waste of a lot of energy and emotions. And I don't have time for this. I have better things to spend my energy and emotions on. So the conversation is going nowhere. Nothing will change. And there's no fruit from the seeds of this conversation. That is when enough is enough. So, what are things that we can do to diffuse this situation when we get to that point? When Uncle Bob gets to that point, when your coworker gets to that point, when your friend who's always there telling you about her problems, and she says she's changed and she's become a better person and she's growing, but you see the same pattern over and over again. And then she asks you what you think, and you want to tell her what you think, and you're giving her advice. And then she has an excuse every time you're giving her advice on why you don't know what you're talking about, or that won't work for her. The conversation is over because that's a waste of your breath. You're not going nowhere, and she's not going to listen because she's going to come back with an excuse every time you have that conversation. At that point, that conversation is enough. So what can you do? You stop the conversation. You remove yourself or the other person physically. That means, hey, nice conversation. I got to go. Or I got to go to the restroom. I'm going to the restroom. Wherever you move yourself physically, you move yourself, whether it's physically for safety or for your peace of mind. But we have to move ourselves physically. Now, tell me, all these instances that I've told you, have you ever been in any of them? Have you ever had that Uncle Bob that is at every family Thanksgiving and just is obnoxious? For me, mine was actually my Uncle June. I rode a plane with him. He was totally intoxicated. I will never, ever, ever ride a plane with him again. That's just something that I've learned. So, like I said, have you ever had those kind of people, or those people who want to talk politics or sports, and you know they are not the people to talk politics or sports because it will get heated, or you can't play a game with because they take the game too seriously? Like, you can't play a card game with them, or you can't play a board game with them because Monopoly becomes a war zone. You know, Family Feud becomes a literal feud. You have any of those people in your family, or any of those people you know, or any of those coworkers? So you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's when enough is enough. And then another reason is for your own self respect. When you feel that you can't remain respectful and you can't remain your respect, or they're treating you disrespectful, then it's time to stop the conversation, and enough is enough. And as always, we want to preserve our energy. I only have so much energy a day. And so I want to use it for the things that are more productive. And arguing with you just isn't productive in my life right now. So that's when you either serve, you cut the conversation. Sever is the word I was trying to say. You either sever the conversation or you sever the relationship, and you make it non debatable because you don't want to waste your energy on that. So, are you tracking with me? Let me know. So, it boils down to actually all it is setting boundaries. And I actually talk more about that in episode 3 of setting boundaries. But what you're doing is setting boundaries. You're letting them know how to treat you, how you desire to be treated. And you're just saying what you will and what you will not accept. And so, with that saying, that setting the boundaries, it all boils down to you knowing that you're enough, play on words, to demand enough. That's all it is. You're enough to demand enough. So, you're demanding enough for your safety, for your peace of mind. I went all on these, for your self respect, to preserve your energy. The thing is, how do you enforce it and not be cruel or push people away? And that's a lot of times why we don't. We either feel that we're not worth it, that they're more important, or that we don't want to feel like we're enforcing something on other people, or we don't want to be rejected, or we don't want to not fit in. So we choose not to set those boundaries and not to do what we determine is enough. The thing is, we don't want to be rejected by the person, but you're not rejecting the person. What you're rejecting is their behavior. You're not saying the person is bad. What you're saying is their behavior is bad, and you are so worth it. It's all about your worth and your value and what you demand and what you desire and what you deserve. So it's okay to say when enough is enough. When you feel enough is enough, you're enough to demand enough. And a lot of times, what we do is we fail to take action, and it becomes a toxic or unhealthy environment. Love does not translate to abuse. And I want you to remember that. Love does not translate to abuse. So what's the litmus test? How do we know? The thing to ask yourself in any relationship, when it comes to that point, when the conversation gets heated, when you can no longer be civil to each other, when every time you're in their presence, you are irritated, you are sick, and I mean literally sick to your stomach, you get angry, you find it hard to be civil, it just doesn't feel good being around them. When you've come to the point that you are done, you just want it to stop, and you know that you are enough to demand this, then you must do the litmus test. Ask yourself, is this something that I want to pursue? In the big scheme of things, just how important is this? How important is this relationship? How important is that person in my life? And then how important am I to allow myself to remain here? So ask yourself, is this something I want to pursue? And is this something I want to remain in? And third, ask, what is it you want from me? A lot of times we allow things in relationships because we're not sure, or we're basing it off of what we think they want from us. And we never ask that question. We never ask them. One of the things that I learned from a lot of the men that I know is that they tell us what they want. We always say, oh, he never says what he wants. But the thing is, when he does tell you what he wants, a lot of time we as women don't listen. Please, I don't want to hear the backlash from this, but it's true. Really, we don't listen. A lot of times we're listening for what we want to hear and not what's said. And usually a man will only say it once or twice. And if he feels that we're not listening to him, then at that point, he's done. He's like, I'm not going to say it again. I told her what I wanted. I told her I wanted to feel respected and that I wanted this. And then we're like, no, what he really wants is, and then when we go there, they're done. They're done. That's why they're shut down. Not all the time, but most times. That's why they show down. So ask, what is it that you want from me? Remember, I wasn't supposed to be talking about those kind of relationships. Just went off for a minute. But ask whoever it is, your girlfriend that always calling to talk to you and tell you about her problems. Ask, what is it that you want from me? Did you want me to give you advice and tell you my opinion? Or did you just want a sounding board and you just want to tell me and walk through it yourself? Because I need to know that up front before we move further in this conversation. Because I don't want to give you something you don't want. I want to give you exactly what you're looking for. And then if you feel at that time that that's not how you can proceed in this relationship, if that's not what you're willing to do in this relationship, ask yourself, is this something I'm willing to fulfill? If this is something that I'm willing to do, and if the answer is no, then it's time to end that conversation or that relationship. But there's some severing that needs to happen. Again, don't forget the litmus test. Is this something I want to pursue? In the scheme of things, how important is it? Is this something that you're willing to deal with? Is it something that you're willing to fulfill? And ask them, what do you want from me? What is it that you are expecting from me? And then are you willing to fulfill it? Ask those questions. I am so glad you were able to hang out with me today for our ringside chat. I hope it didn't get too heavy for you because you are amazing. You really are. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe or follow. And if so, you won't miss another episode. So, one more thing I want you to do, that's visit masteringyourmonday.com/pathway. And that's where you'll find my goodies and gifts just for you. Make sure to let me know how I can serve you further. And masteringyourmonday.com/pathway gives you the button to hit because it's the place to do it. I can't wait till next time. But until then, take care. I want to thank you for listening to the Mastering Your Monday podcast. I hope you learned at least one tip or technique you can walk away with and implement today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show, and let us know how much you enjoyed it and what you learned from this episode. We honor your time and your commitment to Mastering Your Monday podcast. And as always, we want to remind you, you are cherished, respected, valued, and in control. See you on the next episode.